Hi, welcome back to another episode of Nobody's Doing It Right, the podcast for those who are uncertain. My name is Kat. I am your host. For today's episode, we're going to talk about how you shouldn't confuse questioning with the doubting. And this is something that I really struggle with because I am a black and white thinker. I'm an all or nothing thinker. I get caught in that mindset a lot. And sometimes when I'm doing something, I'm on a path, I'm starting something new, whatever, and I start questioning if it's right for me, do I like it, do I not like it, immediately my mind will think, okay, because you're questioning this and it's not an 100% yes, that must mean you're doubting it. And then that inevitably leads me to self-sabotage. This is a cycle that I've gone through so many times in my life, and it's so incredibly frustrating. So if this resonates with you, you get it. You understand how annoying it is to experience this, where you're doing something, you're starting off strong, you're starting off well with it, you enjoy it. And then you start asking yourself, okay, do I like this? Is this actually right? Or maybe there's some things that pop up that you learn throughout the process of it because you can't know everything from the get-go. You start learning these things and you're like, oh, okay, that's interesting. That's a little bit more difficult or unexpected. And then immediately you're like, well, if I'm questioning this, if it's not completely easy and, I know everything from the start of it, that must mean that I'm doubting this, and that must mean that it's not right for me. So I have to abandon it right now. Because if it's not right for me, why would I be here? It has to be right for me from the get-go. It has to be immediately right for me from the beginning, which of course is black and white thinking. It's this idea that you have to know everything from the onset. You have to know it all. You have to have all the information so that you can make the most aligned, safest decision so that you feel okay, so that you don't feel unsafe. That's what it comes from, right? It comes from a place of fear, ultimately, as I've learned from my own experience. You fear making the wrong decision because to make the wrong decision would mean that you are put in a threatening position. And often what happens here is that there's maybe that feeling of, I can't handle it, right? I'm not strong enough. I'm not capable of enough. I'm not smart enough to handle making a wrong decision. And that's the crux of this, right? It's that the self-worth issue right there, the self-limiting beliefs of, I can't handle making a wrong decision, so I'd rather abandon something that doesn't feel fully, totally right from the beginning. I'd rather abandon it than allow myself to get more information, to challenge myself, to, establish the skills and tools to be able to handle things as they progress. And of course, that is very difficult when it comes to actually growing and changing and making progress in life, because if you're always abandoning the things that feel uncertain, you're never going to get to a place where you are, leveling up in a sense, because the things that are certain are things that you know already. They're things that you've already done. So they're things that have gotten you to where you are right now. So you cannot continue to do those and still expect change and growth. It doesn't make sense. It would have to be things that make you uncomfortable. It would have to be things that you have to question. And I think questioning is actually a really important part of the human cognitive process. You have to question things. You can't go into anything and not have any questions at all. That's part of it. That's how you know something is actually right for you or not. You wouldn't know it from the get-go. You wouldn't know from the beginning because that doesn't make sense. How can you know something that you've never experienced before? You have to take time. You have to let yourself get to know it better. You have to let yourself question, okay, do I like this? Do I not like this part of it? Is this something that I'm willing to sacrifice? Is this something that I need to compromise on? Whatever. That happens over time, and it happens with patience and slow and steady. This also applies to relationships, right? I'm looking at it for right now, as I've been explaining it, mostly from career endeavors, creative endeavors, whatever. It applies to relationships too. This idea of entering a relationship, being really, really excited from the beginning of it, feeling like, oh, this is the person, this is the one, this is exactly who's right for me. Of course, that sets you up also for establishing a fantasy that you live in because you don't know this person fully yet. But then the moment things get a little bit difficult, you start learning more and more about this person, you start seeing their humanness, you start questioning, oh, maybe this person isn't right for me, or maybe this is actually something that I'm not quite, comfortable with, or a dynamic that's not fully right. And then you might say, okay, then if I'm questioning these things, if I'm not, if I'm having to learn more about this person and I'm realizing that they are, human and imperfect and flawed, that must mean I'm doubting this relationship. And so I have to leave. I have to abandon it. I have to run away. That ties into avoidance. It's this feeling of, I'm unsafe here because I don't know everything. I don't have all the control here. So I got to go because I'm going to get hurt. I'm going to be vulnerable. I'm going to be unsafe, whatever. And of course, that really holds you back from establishing strong, healthy bonds with people, because you do need to take time to get to know them and to recognize the truth of who they are and what it would look like to be in a relationship with them when you're seeing all of it. So you do have to question. You have to question your partner. If you're not questioning, that's actually more concerning. As I've learned now, getting older, everything requires you to question it. You have to have the cognitive ability and awareness to say, okay, this is interesting. Like, what does that mean? Or what would that look like moving forward? If you're not doing any of that, you're not seeing the truth of things. You're not seeing the reality of things. And then you're not going to make decisions that are based in the reality of something. You cannot be blind to those things. And I think a lot of people try to be, whether it's relationships, whether it's work things, whatever. I think a lot of us try to be blind to those things because it's easier to just not, out of sight, out of mind. I don't want to see it. I don't want to think about it. I just want to live in the fantasy of what I want it to look like. Because then when you start questioning, if you confuse questioning with doubting, you'll probably end up self-sabotaging, right? And you probably know that about yourself. You know, like, the moment I question, I'm going to start thinking I'm doubting this and then I'm going to leave. You probably know that you go through this cycle. And I've experienced it too. So what I've learned now is that the questioning part of this is necessary. You need to question things. And just because you're questioning it does not mean you're doubting it. It does not mean this isn't right. Everything requires a hypothesis that needs to be tested and needs to be proved with evidence. Everything does. You can go into something being like, oh, I think this is actually really right. I think this is a good relationship. I think this is a good potential job, whatever. That's your hypothesis. And now you have to test it with evidence. You have to question it by actually seeing how things unfold. So you know for sure. So you can make a decision that's actually true, that's based in reality. That does not mean you're doubting it. And it's okay to question things. It's okay. That's necessary. And I think maybe this might be tied to childhood and the way you were brought up. Maybe you were never allowed to question your parents. Maybe you were never allowed to question authority, and the idea of questioning it is in some way dangerous for you. It meant something, you know. I think I can kind of relate to that myself. Never being allowed to question why you have to do something, or if something's right or wrong, you just do it and that's that. You know, it could be tied into that, but of course, I'm not a therapist. These are just things that I've kind of experienced within myself. But doubting and questioning are two different things. And doubting is also, I think, a little bit more tied to getting that information that you need to get, right, through questioning. Once you start questioning, you start gathering more evidence, more information. Then when things maybe feel not as aligned as you thought they were, then the doubting might kick in. And that's okay. Once that doubting starts going, then at least you're basing your decision, you're basing that on more information. But you need to gather more information. Because I think if you don't allow space to question things, and it has to either be yes or no, black and white, all or nothing, you're not actually experiencing life in its fullness. You're experiencing a small sliver of life that is safe and comfortable, and that's not really living ultimately, right? Like, you're not actually experiencing the fullness of what's going on and allowing yourself to show yourself that you are capable of understanding things better, of deciphering and discerning things in your life. You're showing yourself that you're not capable of it, that you have to almost coddle yourself and protect yourself constantly so that you don't even have to look at the reality of things and decide, do I like it or do I not like it? It could be easier too, right? To just say, I'm going to leave, I'm going to abandon this, because having that discernment, having that questioning process, it takes effort. It takes more time. It takes more strategy in a sense, right? Like, there's a lot that goes into it to understand yourself enough to know, is this actually aligned with what I want? What do I want? Do I even know what I want? You know, it really forces you to look at yourself deeply. And if you haven't done that work, or you're kind of scared to, then of course it's easier to just abandon the moment questioning happens and to see it as black and white. So obviously this is an experience that is specific to certain people, so I'm sure it won't resonate with everybody. But if you find yourself questioning things, which is a normal process, and then immediately you think you're doubting it, take a step back. It does not have to mean the same thing. You can question it. You're allowed to question it. You're proving your hypothesis, basically. And that's important in life. How much stronger is a relationship when you're actually able to have evidence backing up why you want to be in it, rather than just saying, I knew immediately and I didn't need any more information? That doesn't really make sense. That doesn't really, I think, provide a very strong foundation to that relationship, right? But if you actually have evidence behind why you want to be in it, that actually makes it make more sense. Of course, yeah. See, because we're aligned in this and our values align here, and yeah, we're a little bit different in this area, but it makes up for it in this area or whatever. Like, having that evidence, having that proof, having those answers that you need through questioning is really important in all aspects of your life. So don't completely abandon things. Don't self-sabotage just because you're noticing yourself questioning. You should be questioning because nothing in life is perfect. I think the discourse online, actually, when it comes to relationships specifically, is if it's the right person, you'll know right away. You know, and I really, I don't really like that narrative because, again, it does not consider the fact that so many of us struggle with this level of perfectionism, this black and white thinking. And I don't think it's realistic. I don't think that you will know right away. How can you? You don't know them yet. You don't know their intricacies yet. To me, it doesn't make sense. Obviously, everyone's allowed to see it the way they want to see it. So I'm not, disparaging anyone else's perspective on this. But I think that's a common narrative of the right one you'll know right away. It's like, I don't think so. How does that make sense? Yeah, you might have a connection. You might feel like there's a click that happens. Great, love that. But you still need more information. Of course you do. So yeah. I hope this was helpful. I hope it was informative. I hope it gave you a different perspective on this topic. If you want to work with me one-to-one, you can book a call or book some email guidance. I also have a Substack where I write about topics like this, and you can follow me on my social media accounts for all my other content. Other than that, thank you for listening, and I'll be back again soon with another episode.